Once upon a time, the ancient legends tell, a woman named Truth, rising from the bottom of her well, looked on the world, but hearing how it lied, returned to her seclusion, horrified. There she stayed, so conscious of her worth, that not even Pilate's question made her rebirth, nor Galileo kneeling to deny the laws that hold our planet beneath the sky. Meanwhile, Truth's nicer sister, who men call fiction, did all of Truth's work and all of Truth's diction. With so much zeal, devotion, tact, and care, that no one noticed Truth was no longer there. Thank you, Mrs. Haney, for the introduction, for putting so much effort into the programs here. To our campus director, Mrs. Talley, to our chancellor, Dr. Estes, to the administration, the faculty, staff, to our students, and to all who are here. I am elated to be a part of this event. When I started my academic career in the field of history, I was told by my major professor that the study of history is about getting as close to the truth as humanly possible. History is like studying a different world, and to understand that world, we dive deep into it with an open mind. And instead of being pessimistic or optimistic, we historians are realistic in our attempt to articulate that world that once existed to our modern world that exists now. The truth has always been the major factor of history, and to understand that truth, we must look at Jack Nicholson. In the movie A Few Good Men, Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson on the witness stand for this crime. Tom Cruise is talking to Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson is on the witness stand, and Tom says to Jack, "Colonel, I want the truth." Have you seen this movie?
Oh, yeah.
Jack Nicholson simply responds in a fiery way and sells one of the most popular scenes in cinema history and tells Tom Cruise, "You can't handle the truth." Now, I won't make that assumption about you today. Nope, I'm not Jack Nicholson. Instead, I will simply ask a question. Can you handle the truth about Black history? Our modern world has spent time and effort trying to shape a divided perspective about what Black history really means. But to understand how we get to Black History Month, we must first look at the history of Black history. You see, in 1910, the young Carter G. Woodson, of whom which I received his award, was working on his PhD in history at Harvard. In his class, renowned scholar Edward Channing told the students, in which Woodson was the only Black there, that the Negro had no history. Woodson responded that no people lacked a history. And so Channing challenged Woodson to prove him wrong, and therefore Woodson made it his life's work to fight against the challenge. In 1926, Dr. Woodson established Negro History Week. The week was started because the school curriculums across the nation in the 1920s refused and disregarded the teaching of Black history. Woodson decided that the recognition would be on the second full week of February, the very week we are in right now, because it coincided with the birthdays of a white man who was the 16th U.S. President, Abraham Lincoln, and a Black man, an abolitionist and former slave, Frederick Douglass. 50 years later, in 1976, U.S. President Gerald Ford, a white Republican, extended the recognition, and the former week-long event officially became a month. You see, I'm not here merely to boast about the accomplishments of Black people and isolate one group from the other. The goal for me is not to isolate, but instead to accurately investigate. My message to you regarding Black history or American history is that both are so intertwined that in order to tell the story truthfully, they both must be incorporated together. You see, the truth is, Dr. Carter G. Woodson never wanted a Black History Month, nor did he want the week. Instead, all he wanted was, as a historian, for his story to be told truthfully. He didn't want one side to be left out and another side to be inaccurately promoted. Woodson was cautiously optimistic that for 1 week, people, no matter their background, would pause and conduct research. Not merely celebrate, but as Dr. Esther said, learn. After all, the truth is what a historian longs for, and at the heart of who Dr. Woodson was, he was indeed a historian. You see, the truth about Black history is that in 1865, a faction of the Republican Party, known as the Radical Republicans, fought for the permanent eradication of slavery in the United States. This faction, made up entirely of white men, saw the writing on the wall 100 years prior to the Civil Rights Movement. They not only aided in ending slavery in the United States, they also wanted newly freed people to have full citizenship and full civil rights. Now, why is it important that you know this? It's important that you know this because if the radical Republicans got what they desired in 1865, there would be no need for a civil rights movement in 1965. And in fact, Martin Luther King would have never had to have a dream because his dream would have already been a reality. Now you need to know this. And the only way you know it is to know your history. You need to know that during the Gilded Age, in America, big business and industry and inventions were on the rise. Two inventors, Thomas Edison, a white man, and Alexander Graham Bell, a white man, became lauded for their accomplishments. Oh, but you need to know the truth about Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell. You need to know that there was a black man who linked these great inventors together. That man was Louis Latimer. Edison was working on his famous bulb, but it would flash and die. He couldn't get it to stay on, so he called upon Latimer for assistance. Latimer developed the long-burning carbon filament that went inside the bulb, and after this, that light bulb did shine. Oh, you like your lights, don't you? You need to know that Alexander Graham Bell was in a rush to patent his phone because his competition, Elisha Gray, was nearing completion of a phone design himself. So Bell called upon the same Louis Latimer, and in a short time, Latimer not only drafted the drawings for the phone, but he even improved upon Bell's design. Because of this, Bell was able to get the patent before Gray. And if you notice, Latimer was the unsung hero in both of these accounts. Now you need to know this. But how do you know it unless you know the history? You need to know a man by the name of John Newton. Newton was the captain of a slave ship and an investor in the slave trade. He was a white man who eventually became a slave himself for a short time in West Africa. You need to know this story because he went from being slavery's greatest supporter to become slavery's greatest detractor. He became an enemy to his former life, and he was disgusted in his former career. And one day prior to one of his sermons, with sorrow in his heart and a new mission on his mind, he wrote the lyrics, "Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see." So you need to know this. And the only way you know it is to know the history. You see, on yesterday, We celebrated the life and legacy of the late legendary coach Eddie G. Robinson. Eddie Robinson was, and in many ways he still is, a hero in the community. You see, he coached at Grambling State right down the street and became the winningest coach in college football history with 408 wins in his career. And he was good friends with the late legendary Alabama coach Bear Bryant, who had 323 wins in his career. And in their friendship, which lasted over 30 years, Robinson, this black coach, and Bryant, this white coach, would talk all the time. Bryant had been accused of being racist by some, but to Robinson, he was a role model and a friend. Robinson traveled from city to city to hear Bear Bryant speak, and even when Bryant died, Robinson cried upon hearing the news. And in true coach fashion, Robinson said about his great friend that he hated most that he'd never get to line his boys up against Bryant's. Now, if you know your history, you know at that time, there was no telling who would actually win between Grambling and Alabama. It's not like it is today. Now, why is it important that you know this history? Because upon recent Alabama coach Nick Saban's retirement, there were a few lists that went out from the media that mentioned the top winningest coaches in college football history. All of them placed Bear Bryant in third place with 323 wins, but left Eddie Robinson's name off completely, despite the fact that he had 408. Do you know how mad Bear Bryant would be that a list of top winningest coaches came out and his friend, who even surpassed him and became the winningest coach in college football history, was completely left off the list? See why it's important to know history? Do you see how a lack of understanding, a lack of proper research, a lack of proper education, and the lack of knowledge can change the trajectory of history and erase facts? Oh, if those media outlets did not do their research, they did not know their history. But if the media can leave out a man like Eddie Robinson from history, who with all his accolades becomes the winningest coach, what other details are they misrepresenting to you? Oh, I don't only teach history, I also teach psychology, and we cover humanism. I had a black student at GSU this very semester tell me that he feels he has no free will because he's black. See, I had to remind him that the color of your skin, whether black, white, blue, or green, does not represent the level of your success. Instead, your level of success is found in the choices that you make. So I had to let him know, statistically, chances are you won't run into any racism, especially not to the degree of those who walked before. However, if you ever encounter someone who does not like you or who is racist, that's not your problem, that's theirs. See, you might meet someone who hates you because you're black. You might meet someone who hates you because you're white. You might meet someone who hates you because you are mixed. You may meet someone who hates you because of your political affiliation, whether you are Democrat or Republican. But remember that that's their mental deficiency, not yours. Don't fall prey to their ignorance. Don't put their hatred upon yourself. You can't be a victim by viewing the color of your skin as making you a victim. Leave them who hate you, and maybe one day they'll figure it out on their own. In the words of one scholar, if you don't know your history, you are destined to repeat it. So I'll leave you with this. Last week, one of my mentors died. The late, great attorney Thomas Todd. He had an answer to the attack on truth in our society, and I believe that his answer, Dr. Carter G. Woodson's answer, and my answer are the same. The truth is, the answer to all of these problems is education 24/7, 365. What can you do? What can LDCC do moving forward? Is to continue to foster a learning environment. If you teach, don't just say you teach. Instead, you impact lives. Be proud of what you do. If you are a student, don't just say you are a student. You are making an investment in your future. Be proud of what you do. If you are a custodian, don't just say you are a custodian. You are part of the beautification plan of the campus. When I go to class, the elevators surely smell good. You would know if they smell bad. Be proud of what you do, because you never know what historian is looking to record your story. So I say this to you: keep teaching, keep assisting, keep learning, keep moving, keep working, keep loving, and in all that you do, do it so well that no one living, no one dead, and no one yet born could ever do it any better. Thank you so much for having me. And remember, education 24/7, 365. There you go. You all have a good one.